a slideshow and would be great later, but I think we should talk.
Yeah.
And
Sounds good.
tell us, where are you? Where are you based? Where can people actually find you?
Yeah. So I'm in Virginia Beach, but I am, all over. I'm Detox on all platforms, and people can find me there. Any platform, basically. You can find me as the Detox Doc. And because I do wellness coaching too, so that's why it's like across states.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's get deep and personal here. When you figured out that it was mold, like how long did it take for you to figure out that the symptoms you had, and was it just you or other people in your family?
Yeah, so I actually wasn't even the worst. So we were in a moldy home and there was mold in the basement, and they said, this is a common story. They said that they fixed it. Basically, they had cleaned it or whatever. Maybe done a small remediation or something. We were renting. So then my husband had a lot of gut issues, and he also had a lot of neurologic symptoms. My son, who was a toddler at the time, he had some respiratory issues, which, is classic for mold, but he had a lot of rashes, and he was very like low energy. And as a toddler, that was a huge red flag. So we got like this whole conventional regular workup, everything, because I was like, I can do this. I am on that. I'm going to figure this out. I was kind of more of the mental health issues. I had a lot of, anxiety, depression. I had the feeling of something always in my throat. It was like that globus sensation that really, I feel like in a lot of cases is probably due to mold. And a few other random symptoms, some rashes as well. But we moved out of that place because, well, we were moving anyway, but we were like, good riddance. That place was moldy. And then I got better like almost immediately. But my husband and my son did not. So we had to do like full workup, and we did functional medicine after conventional medicine. And finally, my husband got a mold toxins, a urine mycotoxins test, which is a test that I do for mold usually. And as well as you can see it like on a gut zoom, or you can see it on an organic acids test. But did he also have a lot of phlegm in the morning? So yes, he did, to answer your question, and Z. So then we figured out it was mold among other things, but mold can trigger a lot of things as well. So definitely, it took, overall, that span of time was like over a year, right?
Wow. Okay.
So with worsening symptoms and just, even though moving. I haven't gotten a mycotoxin test, but I feel like I have multiplicity. Yeah, so starts the gut, right?
Yeah. So let's back, Dr. Diana, let's go back to people who because you may have, like, there's so many different people on right now. Some have mold, some don't have mold, some don't even know what mold is, right? And so with like a super easy question, right? What if someone asks you, what is mold? Do you think everyone knows what it is?
No. So mold is a fungus, and we think about maybe mold like on the bread that was there for too long, or on your food, or maybe outside. But, I'm mostly referring to, and we do consume mycotoxins in some foods. They're highly contaminated, grains and, coffees and some other foods, peanuts, and a few other things are highly contaminated by mold. But largely like to get high levels of mold toxins in your body. It's usually an exposure to mold in your home, but it can be hidden mold. So it's, it can be, and it's not always going to look like this big, sort of slab of like moldy bread or whatever. It can be mold toxins that are circulating throughout your HVAC system, can be in the crawl space, can be in the bathroom, of course. Anywhere there's moisture can have that fungus or mold there. And then, a lot of times it's invisible exposure though. It's the toxins and the spores that we can't see. That's not like the straight up, like, oh, that's really moldy, let me clean that kind of thing.
So it's a yeast growth, right? Can we say that? How would you describe it?
Yeast is unicellular and mold is multicellular, so it's like a cousin of yeast. It's a cousin of like Candida.
Yes.
It's cousin of like the yeast infection yeast.
There you go.
So it's like they're both fungus.
Just to give a sense of it's a living organism species that, right? It's like yeast, but it's multicellular, so it's called mold. right?
Yeah.
And just to really be clear, you can find it. It's you usually can't see it most of the time. It's in the air. It's on surfaces connected to moisture, HVAC, even connected to or in grain, like in
Yeah.
food, right? In food that's bagged food, right? And so this can affect. It's not something that's just specific to the West. This can affect you anywhere in the
Oh,
world,
yeah.
right? Are there
Yeah.
certain parts world where you feel like, or certain climates that would have higher, like you'll be more prone to mold, so you should actually be paying attention to this?
Yeah, so I mean, definitely more humidity is going to predispose to more mold. Humidity, 50% or greater mold can grow. And I mean, it's way higher than that a lot of times. But even in the desert, mold can grow. It's indoor humidity, right? If your indoor humidity hits 50% or greater, which if you turn on that shower and you don't click that fan, it's going to get that high. So it is indoor humidity. It can still grow. You really can't be like, okay, I'm going to move to the desert and then I will never ever have any mold anywhere.
You could
Yeah.
still get.
Yeah.
So you mentioned like an array of symptoms that your family members had. Like it went from gut symptoms to skin symptoms to mental,
Mhm.
and then chronic fatigue, like fatigue and just
Yeah.
lethargy, right? So it's the entire body. It's not just a specific area. It's really the entire body.
Mm-hmm.
Why, when you see a conventional doctor, because you are a
Yeah.
physician, right? And why do you think there's this gap between connecting the dots that could this be something environmental? Like why are doctors generally just not talking about it
Well,
much?
we're not trained and it's not covered in med school, it's just not part of conventional medicine with, why, and then the bigger question is like, why is it not covered in conventional medicine? And I think I mean, probably it all comes down to money, right? Because it gets very messy and very expensive whenever you're dealing with these mold claims and, none of this is covered by insurance because we can't 100% prove that a certain mold exposure caused your mold toxicity because those toxins are lipophilic. They can live in the fatty tissues of the body, everywhere around the body, even around organs. And so could it be from your food from 10 years ago? Could it be from your, moldy dorm room from however many years ago? Or could it be from right now? It is difficult to 100% prove that.
Hmm.
So it gets very, very much into this legal and very much into these money issues. So I think there's also, I mean, science clearly has, I have tons of articles, NCBI articles on mold,
Mhm.
but, regular medicine is usually like a generation behind. And I think you can agree because even with gut health, some of this stuff that, you're doing, a lot of people aren't doing because they're behind.
Yes, yes, yes. So if someone suspected they had their symptoms could be related to mold, are there any simple tests, or is there a specialist? Would you say, like, maybe start off with an allergist? Are there any basic simple tests they could get done,
Yeah,
with insurance coverage or with minimal
yeah.
fees? You have to jump right into seeing a mold expert who generally is going to be integrative or functional medicine, right?
Yeah, yeah. So definitely, yeah, that's the best. But for as far as like free evaluation, I have a mold symptom questionnaire, and a lot of mold practitioners do. And I put that together, and you get a different score based on which symptoms you're saying yes to, and the frequency of those symptoms, and then you can kind of score it because there are certain symptoms, and I have some reels on this that are more indicative of mold than others, like shooting pains as well as occipital headache from the back of the head, things like that, like chronic fatigue syndrome, very, very common with mold. So certain symptoms are going to be more concerning for toxin illness. It gets a little bit it overlaps with a lot of other conditions. So it's hard to say like, oh, you definitely have mold, without testing it, the urine mycotoxins. But yeah, you can see an allergist and that can tell you if you're allergic to mold, but that won't tell you, okay, say it's like with food, right? You're allergic to this food, but are you,
Are
or to this mold,
you
but do you have mold toxins
right?
in your body? That's a different
Yeah.
question.
So the best test would actually be to do the urine
Yeah,
microtox to see.
I'm putting it in the chat. Yeah,
Awesome. Awesome.
and I have it so people can order it. Oh.
How much does that test cost on average?
It's not cheap. It's $379 right now.
Okay. And
Yeah.
once you're done, do you feel like the test is fairly accurate?
Yeah. So their white paper is very showing good sensitivity and specificity for those mold toxins. It tests for 29 different toxins right now, and they're always expanding their panel. There are 3 different labs that will do it, but I just choose the one that tests for the most toxins, which is the Vibrant.
Hmm.
And I have it so people can order it themselves on my website as well.
Awesome. Awesome. So imagine you have 20 people who do this Vibrant test, right? And some have symptoms, some don't, right? So what happens when you find some people just want to do testing, right? So
Yeah.
what happens if you find someone who has no symptoms but has high mold on their testing, on their urine testing? And what happens when you have someone who has some symptoms, but or a ton of symptoms and has very little, like some mold, but very little.
Yeah.
I think that's where that expertise comes
Yeah.
in. What do you make of? Like to share with the audience about
Yeah.
that variability amongst people?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, of course, no test is perfect. So if your drainage pathways are blocked, for example, like if you're really constipated, then, well, they need to see you. But aside from that, they are, the toxins are not going to be coming out
Right.
so much. So you can be blocked up and you can be holding onto those toxins. So you have to take it in context. I like to do different things to provoke the test and make sure we get a good reading. But if people don't have high mold levels, but they do have symptoms, then it can be, I mean, there's so many other things that those symptoms can be, right? And the first thing that I would go to is like gut dysbiosis, or other toxins too.
Okay.
Medicare cover your urine mycotoxins. That is very, very wonderful. And please reach out to me to tell me how you got that covered because it's very difficult to get it covered. I have tried.
I've never.
So, yeah.
No, not through
Yeah,
Medicare.
please let me know how that whole process works. I would love to hear that because I've gotten it covered by some people's HSA FSA cards will work, others do not. Some religious insurances will work. Testing is affordable compared to constantly battling symptoms. That right there. Yep. Natural Health Network. Yeah, I agree. So yeah, but then if they have no symptoms, but they have high toxins, then we would say, okay, general detox protocol. We need to do it because you may not see symptoms now, but it can start over time.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well worth getting the test and understanding. Doing tests when you have symptoms makes a lot of sense, right? That's what makes a lot of sense. And so when you find a positive urine mycotox super high, and this person also has symptoms, what's your next step? Where should they be looking? Where's this mold coming from, right?
Yeah, well, the best is to contact a licensed mold assessor to go ahead and test the whole place. My friend on here is William Mold Assessor on Instagram, and he's great on that. But and does like virtual consults and stuff too. But if that's not in the budget, then to get some air samples at least DIY to figure out if there's a current exposure. And then, test your home, test your body kind of thing, because it's correlated. If it's an environmental exposure or illness, then we have to figure out where environment it's coming from. Can be, work, can be the school, can be the car, can be anything. I had a client who had to get rid of his car and then he got better. So it depends, there can be mold anywhere. So I try to figure out where it's coming from and then go on with a detox regimen.
Let's jump into that detox regimen because a lot of people feel like it's just like conventional medicine and just take these antibiotics and you're going to get better. How long does the process take and what does it typically entail? I mean, you don't have to give us all your pearls, but in general, what's the process like?
Yeah, so I usually work with people for around 6 months if they're doing like a plan with me. Sometimes, of course, just one time and then, they go and do their own thing. But it depends on if their gut needs to be reset, then we do a gut protocol, usually first along with some general detox supplements. So I'll go through kind of the categories of supplements that we want to cover. Those would be binders to bind up the toxins. Antifungals usually, and sometimes we don't even need them. That's kind of a complex topic. Antioxidants, things like glutathione, anti-inflammatories, the things, anything from omega-3s, turmeric, stuff like that, as well as organ support, because the liver is trying to process out all those toxins and convert them to the less toxic form so they can process out of the body, but it gets backed up very, very quickly. So organ support to support the liver. And walking, running, smoothies. Yes. So, and low toxin lifestyle. So yes, moving is good, moving around, because mold loves stagnation. It will grow in those dark, crevices. So definitely definitely moving will combat mold. Mold is trying to compost you, right? It's a composter. Don't let it compost you. And then low toxin dietary regimen, which we already kind of mentioned. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so these are going to be, of course, during the protocol, you're on this for a certain amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about nutrition in terms of diet and lifestyle? How does that all impact the treatment?
Yeah, so important, because, everything from sleep to nervous system regulation, everything definitely will make or break, your detox protocol. And when people say detox, they're like, it's kind of this buzzword, but we're getting toxins out of our body, so that's literally what it is. So that's what I call it. So it's and I do have, by the way, a list of general mold detox supplements, which is on my full script, which is on my link tree, just to kind of give an idea. People are like, well, what does that regimen, look like in front of my face if I'm kind of just buy that regimen? It's not one regimen is not going to be, it's not a cookie cutter regimen, but this is kind of like an example. So I have it on there.
And so people would follow this regimen for several months, depending on the intensity of symptoms and how much mycotoxins they have in their system. But the most important thing is to kind of find where the mold is coming from and get out of environment if at all possible, right?
Yeah, and sometimes it's not a current exposure, but we need to rule it out.
Right. So sometimes if it's an exposure that happened many, many years ago, it is something where certain people are genetically predisposed to outside of that environment still be suffering with symptoms like 10 years later, years later.
Yeah, definitely. Approximately like 23% or 1 in 4 people do not detox mold well due to HLA-DR subtypes and some influenced by the NTHFR as well. Some methylation does play a part. So definitely, boosting that up is really important. But yeah, at least 1 in 4 people just need to actively detox those toxins, or they're just gonna stick around, or could be forever.
So yeah, some information about real-time labs may be covered here. Have you tried them? I think I've used them.
So they were the first ones to ever do mycotoxin testing, and they test for like 5 different categories of toxins. It's a little bit less specific, but also useful. And I do have some clients that do use them. So I'll definitely reach out to them and see. Thank you for that.
Yeah. So in terms of the specificity of the mycotoxin, how does it play a role in your treatment plan?
Yeah, great point. So there are certain toxins that affect different body systems. Like the most common mold toxin is called ochratoxin A, and that will affect the kidneys a lot. It's from Aspergillus and Penicillium, which is one of the most common molds. And so that one, interestingly enough, there are certain supplements that will work better for different toxins. For example, with ochratoxin, melatonin actually will help unbind that from albumin. It likes to travel around with the protein albumin. So melatonin will actually unbind that bound. So it's basically So it will help it get out of the body. So that's just one example, but there are a lot of different supplements that will specifically work well for certain mold toxins.
That's really good to know. That's really great information. And so, how are you doing now?
Oh Yeah, so I am, totally well as far as mold illness goes. I still do like daily detox kind of stuff. I take, a fair amount of supplements just because I love them and they make me feel like optimal, but I, don't have mold toxicity anymore. So, and neither does, my husband, he had a lot of underlying medical issues as well, but he doesn't have the mold piece anymore either. And he's very much improved on a lot of the other stuff too, and my son is good as well.
That's wonderful. I'm glad to hear that. How often are you testing your urine? Did you like once you started treatment, when was the next time you tested to make sure that this mold was cleared once you knew that the exposure, you were removed from the exposed area?
Yeah, so I think about 6 months. I like to do it around then. Sometimes people want to do it earlier because they're curious, and it's like you can do it as much as you want to, but you might not see a whole ton of progress. And if you do a test, 1 or 2 months after, you can even see an increase in levels because you're getting them out and they're being feed out more. So
that's good. So 6 months looks like a really good time. And
yeah.
We've kind of talked about the symptoms, right? And we've talked about the testing, but let's go to the how. How does mold cause so many issues? Because, sometimes we'll see some patients with mold and then it affects the immune system and then there are other things. So tell us a little bit about what some of your, the patients that you've worked with over time, how do they typically present? What do you think is going on and how does it complicate pictures down the road for them?
So you mean like what symptoms do I see, or how does mold cause these
Yeah,
symptoms?
I mean, I think it affects the immune system in such
Yeah.
a strong way, so
Oh,
aggressively and for
yeah.
a period of time that once the immune system is compromised, as what we call immunocompromised, it then leads to other issues.
Yeah, and it's also, directly toxic to the gut lining. So then, I mean, really, the gut rules it all, as you know. So it's like if that gets compromised as well, then you've got increased intestinal permeability, and then you get all sorts of other issues because then it affects every single body system. And these toxins can cross the blood-brain barrier, a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another huge issue because they can ride up the olfactory nerve in the nose, which doesn't have a blood-brain barrier in that area, and they can ride directly to your brain, basically. So it's definitely, direct toxic effects to the lining, all the surfaces, the sinuses as well. They're toxic to the cells, toxic to the immune system, toxic to the hormone axis. So it can be, some of these toxins can kind of indirectly cause estrogen dominance. They're estrogenic toxins. And then fluid balance, like they can make, as I mentioned, it can affect the kidneys. You can even cause, just cause like it to look like you have diabetes, even if you don't.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of different mechanisms there.
So
Yeah.
hormone and then chronic infections and then blood-brain barrier and the gut, of course, that's a lot. So it can really affect. So it's a multi-systemic problem.
Yeah.
A mold.
If mold, yeah. Mold doesn't usually just cause one. Yeah, it doesn't usually just cause one symptom.
Yeah. But so if, someone's listening to this right now and they're like wondering, whoa, maybe everything that's been happening that no one can figure out is mold. Yes, neuro is a huge one. Neurological symptoms, huge, right? Yeah, just like we mentioned. And they're thinking, could this be mold, right? For me, everything. Dr. Diana, where would you have them start?
Yeah, so if if you want to jump right in, then, I'm here for, look at my page, do the mold symptom questionnaire, which is in my mold info hub. That's going to be like the treasure trove for everybody. Is the first link on my link tree is just like an info hub with just ebooks on what is mold, what to do if you're in a mold environment, statistics about mold if you're like, is this really that common? Some articles and stuff like that, just to kind of a full picture there. And then it has the symptom questionnaire as well. But, you can reach out and, we can do, sometimes people want to do a consult to just talk about like, should I get this test, or like what test should I get? What should I do? Or just, jump right in and get the test. Depends on kind of like where you're at. If you want to start with kind of more exploration, or if you want to jump in and just do some testing, get that information, get on the road with it.
That's so good. So you're sharing a lot of great information on your platform. So everyone, I think you should definitely check her out, follow her. She's got a questionnaire that she's handing out. She's sharing her full scripts links with the supplements that she does recommend. Dr. Diana is sharing information about the best places and the types of testing that you want to get, just to make sure that your money is well spent. You shouldn't be doing multiple tests over and over. You should really find a high quality test that you can rely on if you're going to spend the money. And yes, it does cost, but I will say, Dr. Diana, the one thing we don't do well in conventional medicine, the one thing we never learned well, was how our environment was going to ultimately impact us. And I think that's the essence of functional medicine. It's that connection between, okay, what's going on in my body genetically or whatever, and then what is going on in the environment that is impacting me, which is what I'm eating: pesticides, emulsifiers, toxins, molds, BPA, plastics, or hormone disruptors. All of those things we don't study in conventional medicine. And there's no way you can imagine that everything in our environment, we live in a bubble. Again, no, we're exposed to these things every day, which is absolutely why this is important. We need people studying this. We need people doing the research. We need physicians like yourself doing the research, understanding what this is, looking at the science behind it, and being able to customize treatment plans for patients so that they can continue to identify the root cause, handle it, deal with it, and then kind of live their optimal lives instead of living in discomfort. So this was so great. Any last words of wisdom, anything you want to share with the audience before we jump off?
No, I mean, I think it's awesome what you're doing as well. I think it's so, uncommon still that people are doing, gut as well as, integrative. And it's like the gut, if the gut isn't happy with mold toxicity or with anything else, then we are going to hit some roadblocks. Yeah. So my website is drstafford.com with the doctor spelled out. But if you just hit up my link tree, then you can see all of those things and all the information that's on there for you. And myself and my team are definitely available if you guys have any questions or want personalized recs.
Thank you so much. And mold is a global problem. It is not just something here. It is in every single part of the world. And some people, there's a question about, as opposed to small mold, you're not able to be affected at this point. If you
Depends.
You
can. Depends on if you're sensitive or not, or if you already have a high toxin load.
Wow. Yeah. Really important information. Yes. All right. Thank you so much. Did you say your website? I think.
Yeah. So I can throw it in the chat. It's drstafford.com with the doctor spelled out. And then as well. You guys, thanks for the great questions. Great questions.
Yeah, we got some really great questions. Thank you so much. And
thank you.
On again, or I'll come on yours.
Yeah.
I will say.
Sounds good. Yeah. Well, when Instagram cooperates with me, we'll do that.
All right. Bye.
Awesome. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.